Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act 2013. Over the last decade, the POSH Act has redefined how organizations uphold safety, dignity, and accountability at work. It has evolved from being a legal requirement to becoming a culture building framework. At Equilibrium Advisory, through our POSH Equally Vertical, we have worked closely with organizations across sectors, and one pattern has become increasingly evident. As workplaces evolve, the context in which safety must be interpreted also shift. The workplace today is fluid, spanning aviation crews in the air, brewery teams in manufacturing spaces, logistics professionals in transit, independent contractors in client environments, and remote or hybrid edtech teams working out of homes. With this evolution, the POSH conversation extends beyond employees and employers to include a wider set of stakeholders, contractors, vendors, gig workers, government authorities and regulatory bodies, and even clients and customers who are part of the operational ecosystem. This roundtable brings together voices that reflect this diversity and complexity. Our aim is not only to interpret the law, but to understand everyday realities through diversity and complexity. Right? Right from shared spaces, driving roles, client interactions, and digital environments. These contexts introduce new challenges in training, inquiry, confidentiality, escalation, and the psychological safety of complainants and respondents. This conversation is intended to be reflective, sector specific, and deeply practical. I invite our speakers and participants to approach it with curiosity, nuance, and candor as we collectively unpack how POSH frameworks evolve with workplace realities. I would like my colleague Sana to introduce the speakers for today's roundtable discussion.
Thank you, Smriti. Hi, good evening, everyone. So it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome the esteemed panelists that we have today. I'll start off with Anjali Chatterjee. Anjali is she's a global talent management and development professional with over 35 years of experience across hospitality services, manufacturing, and telecom. She has worked with Tata Communications, LG Electronics, Jet Airways, and most recently superannuated as Chief of People and Culture at Air India Express, where she contributed to the organization-wide people and culture strategies. Welcome, Anjali. We also have Ankita Saple, a human resources professional currently heading the HR function at Bits Pilani Digital. With experience across recruitment, staffing, and HR operations, she plays a key role in building efficient HR processes that support organizational growth and workforce needs. Welcome, Ankita. Uh,
Thank you.
we also have we also have a seasoned corporate lawyer, Ankur Jolly, amongst us. He serves as a general counsel director, legal compliance and risk at AB and Bev India. With more than 2 decades of experience, he has managed regulatory compliance, corporate governance, risk management, and major legal transactions across regulated industries. Welcome, Ankur. And last but
Thank you.
definitely not the least, we have Sharvari Ujjwal Nikam. She's an accomplished HR leader with 18 plus years of experience in driving strategic HR functions. Sorry, if I may request, I think if you can go on mute because there's a lot of background noise. I wanted to interrupt. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. As I was saying, that Sharvari has 18 years of experience in driving strategic HR functions across DHL supply chain, DHL Express, and Sodexo. She holds an MBA in HR and a specialization in digital HR transformation and people analytics from XLRI. She's also a published author, Microsoft certified professional, and a state level sports gold medalist. Welcome, Sharvari. As I was saying, that this is an esteemed panel, and this is quite an interesting bunch of folks here, will giving us different perspectives from non-traditional workplaces. As you're all familiar, that workplace forms a very, very important component in determining whether a particular organization needs to look into a sexual harassment complaint or not. And in atypical workplaces, and maybe I can start off with Anjali, mostly because coming from your industry experience, Anjali, when it comes to the kind of industry that you belong to, where you have interactions with, where the stakeholders, your employees have direct interactions with public at large and close interactions, how does that look and how does a workplace boundary so as to, pan out in your case?
Thanks, Anna. It's a pleasure being here and talking on an important subject which is close to our heart. And I worked on this for like more than 20 years. So, as you said, that aviation presents a very public facing industry. And it's important. It's a very unique condition that really important highlights the importance of compliance, posh compliance. Now, unlike conventional workplaces, right? I said, aircraft, airport function. Also, when when the crew is picked up from the home to the airport, even that represents, that drive they do every day for 1 or 2 hours also represents a very is a workplace, right? So it is very high risk, high contact, and there are some reasons for it, right? One is very close interactions with passengers, right? So there's a whole frequency of border crossing behavior, the chance of inappropriate verbal or physical contact, or some abusive conduct sometimes during high tension time for flying. Sometimes also there's a presence of very vulnerable passengers, right? It can be unaccompanied minors, it can be elderly passengers, it can be people with disabilities, or like in today's times, distressed travelers. Like that's another huge, issue we have, and things like this elevates our focus on care, need for more sensitivity, and also zero tolerance. Sometimes, and the other important thing is, in this industry, there are multiple external agencies, right? Uh, and these can be security agencies, the ground handling teams, immigration officers, airline partners, vendors in contact, like the taxi drivers who you come in touch with, in contact with, the crew in contact with them. So, even such partners can create a lot of complexity and accountability. And I think also different agencies like this, equals different policies and different power structures. So sometimes, a POSH Act which we have helps to unify these standards and clarify responsibility. Also, please understand while you're on the aircraft, there are limited exit options in the aircraft, right? So whether passenger cannot leave or crew cannot disengage each other, and proximity between the crew is very unavoidable. And such proximity between the crew also amplifies the severity of any harassment, right? Also remember the crew is very young, right? Very young, and they're like we call Gen Z or something, and the whole language is different and the whole thinking is different. So what somebody might think is a posh issue, somebody else might not think. So so having these conversations with crew were almost at all the time across proximity each other, know each other, and from very different generations, really create a very high risk of it. And most important thing is these are 24/7 operations, right? So the crews come at odd hours, going at odd hours. There are layovers, like 1, 2, 3 days of layover again at close proximity. The airports are remote. Then there's international routes. So again, over here, the our POSH Act requires very high accessibility of reporting channels at all time. It requires a fast action from internal committees and documentation in respect to a time zone. And also, like, airlines, as you all know now, have very high public visibility and reputation shows up very huge. And every airline staff we have there is a brand we create. And hence, all this put together, including the high young emotional labor, really brings about its challenges at the workplace and how we do this.
Yeah.
So there's a huge continuous focus day and night of creating a safe workplace, whether in a taxi, on the airport, inside aircraft, or inside a house. So those are some of our challenges we have faced in our industries. Just keep it short and sweet.
No, thank you for sharing that, Anjali. And I think what I'm hearing is also the fact that there are, issues like accountability, risk. These are huge terms, especially the huge
Yeah,
diaspora of stakeholders.
yeah, right.
Your industry folks have to sort of interact with on a daily basis. And it's a
Yeah,
service industry as well. So then there's that, whole angle
yeah,
attached to it
yeah.
as well, right?
Whole
So
generation that you know kids who are 18 years old coming into it, along with senior pilots who are like who are 40, 50, 60. So you have a whole generation of people who do not understand each other so much, and the understanding of posh and sexual harassment is different from generation to generation. So
Yeah.
that makes it really complex.
That's a very valid point, and that brings me to Ankita. Speaking of generational gaps, where you're dealing with educational institutes, Ankita, where you have extreme gaps in terms of generations, right? Where you have kids and you have students, you have teachers, you have stakeholders, and those interactions also become viable because when it comes to again the risk factors, because you're minors again, which is a completely different territory, potential more interaction with minors than any other industry that we're looking at least in this panel today.
Yeah.
How does that
Yes.
look like? How does the workplace definition really, really change for your industry, Ankita?
Right. So we are an edtech, right? This is the new buzz today. And as an edtech division, we operate at an intersection where we have very two different work cultures coming into picture. Uh, it's half from the typical corporate environment, and half of it comes from the institute, academic institute ecosystem. Both groups bring such a different mindset, behaviors, expectations, and working pattern. So bridging a gap between the workplace, it's the employees itself is so tough. And with all that, we have our students who are on a remote structure. Every student interaction or a student faculty interaction happens digitally. This makes our virtual platforms an integral part of the workplace, wherein safety, boundary, and conduct is very critical. So blending the cultures, blending the generations together, engaging them, and communicating the posh practices across the virtual and physical space is making it all unique, and with the involvement of under 18 students, we have so many more regulations to look at. We have UGC guidelines, we have POSH guidelines, we have POSCO. So it is making it very critical and unique for me to manage.
Yeah. Is it also not complex, right, Ankita? Like, from the
Yeah.
standpoint of, look, you have this POXO POSH overlap. There's so much of debate on it. What works, what doesn't work, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. And when you workplace angle, there are compliances when it comes to the workplace, right, under the POSH Act, which is a law. So again, there could be those challenges as well from what you said, right, from virtual as well as from physical space. I also want to invite from a physical space point, I think from a warehouse standpoint, Sharvari, you come in as well. Your industry deals literally on ground when it comes to logistics, where you have people from different, not only generations, but different socioeconomic backgrounds at the warehouse, where it's completely, I think it's chaotic, is what I understand, right? Not that the other industries probably not, but how does the physical space and the proximity in physical spaces and the overlaps of different stakeholders, like you don't have only employees from your organization, you may have employees from other organization. How does that change the workplace dynamic for you, Sharvari?
Yeah. So, Sana, thank you for that question. You have rightly mentioned that the workplace or the environment that we have is quite different compared to other industries. So, we have around 20,000 employees plus, which includes DHL employees as well as the contractual employees. Now, when we have warehouses, it is a mix of set of employees where we will be having DHL employees plus those who are on contract will also be working closely with DHL employees, right? At the same time, a lot of our warehouses have spaces where the client themselves sit out, or the clients will have a team who is based out of sitting in our warehouse, right? So now in such cases, it's DHL employees, it's our contractual employees, it's the client who is based out of our warehouses, or even the vendors who are working with the clients who visit the warehouse. So all of this form part of our under our purview, wherein if POSH compliance is what we are looking at, then we have to keep all these different categories in mind when dealing with any situation. So it's not just employees, but yeah, contractual employees and the others as well.
Yeah. So do you also go back to your contractual arrangement for determining what comes within the workplace and what doesn't come within the workplace category for these stakeholders? As
So
in,
if, as in, yeah, continue.
yeah, yeah. As in, I mean, would you have that arrangement with from a workplace standpoint of what could get covered, right? For these individuals, say contractual workers, like you mentioned, you have clients
Yeah,
sitting out. So there's a
yeah.
clear demarcation, right, of what is their workplace as opposed to what is DHL's workplace.
Correct.
Is that
Yes, there is. Yeah, yeah, there is. So, if we are the principal employer, then if there is a posh complaint that arises, then it is our responsibility to take lead on that particular issue and take it through. But if there is a client and the person is belonging to the client team or a vendor from the client's team, then we are no longer the principal employer. However, we'll aid and we'll facilitate the coordination between these two teams. We'll support as much as required, but definitely we will not take out our hand because we are not the principal employer. So we give as much as support as possible there.
Yeah. And the principal employer concept, Ankur, in your industry, right, the manufacturing setup is very pertinent because you all also hire a lot of contractual workers. And I know for a fact that AB and Bev is also very, very high on the diversity quotient, right? In the manufacturing setup, including of females as well from an AB and Bev perspective, which is a manufacturing setup for a brewery can raise eyebrows or can just basically bring about questions about safety, etc., from a workplace standpoint. Ankur, what are your thoughts about it?
Agree with you. And the kind of industry we are in, we are the largest beer company of the world. So it brings in tax where people are seen in the industry where they are working for. So that make it more complex. Further, we have a three kind of establishment. One will be where everybody is living in terms of their uh, their hubs, which is like a tier one cities. Then we will have warehouses, as Sharvari was mentioning about, where we store our products, more than 100. Then we have breweries, and breweries will not be in a tier, well, they will be industrial area. There will be in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So there is a total stigma which is attached to somebody working in the industry, number one. Then we don't find a lot of women working in our industry. Yes, they will be manufacturing or will be working in the manufacturing setup, but there are a lot of blue collar or the contract labor will be there. But that comes into the workplace, and we need to provide the safe space where can be transparency of reporting, and there is a transparency of POSH as a regulation. So building up those empowerments around that conversation, where we will have plants like in Haryana, or we will have plants in south of India, where the cultural differences are there, where the language barriers will be different, and the how it has been perceived. A woman working in a alcohol industry will be seen in a different manner. So that safety, the culture, the transparency, and empowerment, not looking from only harassment scenarios to be avoided, but that make it more complex for our industry.
No, for sure, Ankur. Thanks for sharing that. And when you talked about the kind of industry from a cultural standpoint, given the places that you meant, given our country is so diverse, right? From a culture, it changes pretty quickly with a matter of kilometers in from an Indian context standpoint. Do you think that is also playing a role, or that requires navigation in terms of the workplace dynamics based on the location?
It definitely does, because I'm not blaming the cultural aspect of our diversity that brings in a lot of challenges and provocation. In a north, where somebody from a woman who is working in a brewery which is making beer bring different connotation, where in South India this is seen as an empowerment where a woman is standing for his family. So that brings in different dimension. Then we have other piece where we sponsor so many things, like we will be sponsoring the World Cup which is coming up. So we have to go to these parties, we have to organize these parties where this is a extension of the workman areas where we are under the posh and other different circumstances, where scenarios may build up, as Anjali was talking about, where there is a lot of interaction of different ages, parties, a lot of alcohol, which can lead to that scenarios which is there. So that is very much important when we are going through that piece, Sana.
No, for sure, Ankur. Thanks for sharing that. And I think before I bring in Smriti to bring her points, I think I also want what's standing out to me as well from these conversations. The fact that culture, socio-economic location, also the kinds of employees that you are hiring from in terms of gender, again, socio-economic backgrounds, education levels, all of that also plays a role in determining the workplace dynamics. Before I think Smriti comes in, I want to highlight a very interesting court case of the Kolkata High Court. In fact, two cases which gave importance to culture to determine whether a workplace sexual harassment can actually be called as a workplace sexual harassment, right? So I think we'll discuss it with time permits, but that is also being considered by the judiciary. So it does play a very, very major role. Yes, Smriti.
Right. So I think very, very important conversation, right? Because we're really now making the foundation for what does atypical workplace really look like. Now we're going really beyond the brick and mortar spaces of how we understand, but we're looking at how they have airports, warehouses, travel will come under that. Any kind of online interaction, online platforms, also having manufacturing plants in communities itself, where people are also staying in the accommodation being provided by the organization. So accommodation houses will also come under the definition of workplace. So when you're really looking at POSH implementation, because the law is sexual harassment of women at workplace, it's just not what is coming under our direct control, but also where there could be shared control as well, like the airports or the communities or online spaces, warehouses, where the teams of clients are also being deputed there. So these are also shared control spaces. And then what does POSH implementation really look like? And these are just some of the industries that we're talking of. But when you look at also, say, for example, residential schools, hospitality, right? Or where you're looking at co-working spaces, where again there's shared control. These are again some form of atypical workplaces that we are looking at, where POSH implementation itself comes into question. Who is the employer? Who are the employees here, right? Who are the different stakeholders that we need to ensure are getting trained under the POSH law? Because when you're looking at it, there are also, like Anjali was sharing, there are passengers, minors, people with disabilities, marginalized identities, distressed passengers that our employees are coming in contact with. We have contractors across the four industries we've spoken of. There could be a lot of contractors, clients teams sitting out of those spaces, people from the community, tier 2, tier 3, where, like Sana also highlighted, that we are not only dealing with harassment, but we're also looking at mindsets and attitudes. And Ankur spotlight that now the conversation needs to really shift from not only prevention of harassment, but also empowerment as well. How are we really building psychologically safe workplaces where if someone is experiencing discomfort, they're able to speak up in these organizations? And again, very, very subjective. Like if an incident in Haryana will look very different incident in South India, right? And under this law, impact supersedes intent. If I feel my boundaries have been crossed, if I have felt uncomfortable, I can file a complaint right now. And to really understand that cultural diversity. And while we are acknowledging the diversity within our country, we're also hearing from all of you how there could also be cross cultural interactions from people from different nationalities as well. Where does the jurisdiction really rest then? If we were to file a complaint for a person working in India against a person working in another country, or vice versa, where does the jurisdiction really rest? Right? And I think that brings us to the next segment of today's conversation. If all of you can really highlight the unique cases of sexual harassment that you have encountered or heard of in your industry. And also, when these complaints were raised to you, did the complainants take it up formally? Or there were some barriers that they were experiencing which restrained them from taking it up formally? Because, like we spoke about the gender, alcohol, intersectionality as well, right? There are also certain narratives that we have around gender and people in aviation. So when these intersectionalities come in, do they also play a role in either people pursuing the complaint or holding back? And subsequently, if a complaint has been filed, what were some of the challenges that all of you experienced as IC members? Right? And what did the redress rate look like? Was it similar if there was a complaint maybe in your head office, or if they're coming in from a manufacturing plant by cabin crew, by a student, will it look different? So we'll love to hear your views on that. Maybe let's start with Ankur.
Sorry, it took time me to unmute myself. So I think
No
two
problem.
kinds of things which I can see in terms of looking at where we are. So one is where we are looking at these events which happen, which is extension of our workplace, and alcohol industry is controlled by the government. So there'll be shops also where our teams are going, and we allow GMTs to go. So look at the age. GMTs will be as something like a management trainee, and look at the age where they will be going. And this is alcohol industry where there are only 65,000 shops in all over India, controlled by government and non-government. So that kind of issues which will come with the shops, and look into that pieces. That will be the one piece which will come across very strongly. The other piece which will come across is the hierarchy which POSH committees automatically creates, which sometimes comes, and this is not with my company right now, but that is the experience which I have seen, where POSH company, where you want to have a written complaints, and there is no safe environment to people to speak, and they don't want to put that into the writing. So how do we deal with that? Because it is not about only complaint and having a structured way of complaints, but that takes away or bring in the hierarchy. Number one, that's take away the agility, and that doesn't provide a safe space where people can just speak up. So I've seen structures where which becomes shackles, and that is, though under the law it is nobody stopping us not to deal with that, but that becomes a shackle in terms sometimes. Yeah.
Right. I think it's a very powerful statement that you said, how structures can become shackles. The idea to bring in these frameworks, POSH frameworks or structures, is to enable people to file a complaint. But we're also seeing how when there are people holding position of power are also holding position in the internal committee, that could become a challenge for people to raise a complaint. And there is another challenge because you have to give a complaint in writing. And what if the people also worry that what if someone sees this complaint as well? What will really happen with this information? And these are additional concerns that we're looking at. And I think something that you really highlighted here is also the age range that we're looking at. GMTs, very young people, also being exposed to vulnerable situations where if they were to experience harassment, they will not only fear safety within the organization, but also outside, because they're saying they're also interacting with shopkeepers and retailers as well. And often that is something, I have also come across from working with retail industry, that people do not want to file a complaint, not because they do not trust their own organization, the systems, but they often worry about the safety outside the organization. Yeah. Thank you, Ankur, for sharing that. Sharvari, since you're also in a similar context, right? A lot of contractors, again, young people, diverse set of stakeholders working in. What are some of the unique complaints that you have come across and the challenges in redressal process?
Yeah. So you know that DHL supply chain is one of the largest contractual logistics player in India, right? And we are spread across 240 plus locations, with having our own fleet as well as captive fleet, and n number of customers who work closely with us. So the number of warehouses that we have and the number of employees that we manage is really, really huge. Now, I will quote a couple of examples that I have, or cases that I have come across, which I felt were different in nature and a bit challenging. So the first one was, I mentioned during the first question, right? So it's POSH is not limited just to our employees, but also to our clients, or if somebody is on the vendor side and working with the clients. So there was, without taking names of any companies or any clients, I would want to mention that we had a situation wherein we had a big client working with us. We have been working with them for a long, long time. And this situation was, there was a vendor who was working with the client. And the complaint was against the person of the vendor from the client side, against one of our contractual employee. So when this all started, it began in such a way where the client initially was probably not sure whether it is their vendor or not. And when it was figured out that the person works closely with the client, then initially they thought that maybe it does not fall under their purview because they are not principal employer. It definitely does not fall under our purview because we are also not the principal employer. But then DHL believes that it's very important that we should, listen to each and every complaint that is being received. We heard out the complaint and we realized that who all is involved, and then we got our client onboarded, we had a discussion with them and we told them that a vendor person from the vendor side is involved and we should check and call that organization as well, where we have a discussion with them. So we were like, the third party for them. But then in this situation, sometimes people don't want to take the ownership because it is not their immediate worker or their employer, which happened in our situation. So that company was not willing to take the ownership, but we pushed and we said that it is necessary. If we have received a complaint, we have to listen to the complaint, right? No matter who it is and with whom are they working with. And then we organized a number of calls, had a lot of discussion around it. Initially it was established that they don't have a POSH committee, the vendor side, not the client. So we checked if they have more than 10 people, then it is necessary. So compliance came into picture and things of that sort. So we ensured that the committee is formed, there is a committee there, and a proper listening to the complaint was given with all the necessary members from the committee. We supported wherever it was possible, and when the redressal was done, it was ensured that this member from the vendor side moved to some other site and was no longer working with them. So it was our persistent push as well as our belief that we have to be fair with each and every person working with us, or in and around our organization or warehouses. So this was one difficult situation that we had to manage because it was not directly linked to us. The second example that I would want to give is we have a lot of contractual employees and a lot of young people come and work with us. So we have a lot of young females, men who come and work with us. So there was a girl who, for her, it was her first job, and she experienced a situation, a POSH complaint. And initially, this person against whom she had complained was somehow her far off relative. I mean, he knew her family, not relative, but he knew her family. So there was a lot of pressure from her family's side not to raise a complaint. But this girl was brave enough. Probably we have a lot of awareness sessions also at our warehouses. So she knew there is a POSH committee and she can come and talk to somebody from the committee. And she gave a return complaint in spite of the pressure from her family side. So sometimes we only look at the corporate level, but we don't know what these people who actually raise the complaint have to go through, even to gather up courage, to muster that courage and bring the complaint on paper. So she went ahead and she did raise a complaint, and this guy who against whom she had complained constantly kept pressurizing her family to withdraw this complaint. But there was enough and more support given from our side, stating that if there is a problem, you need not worry, and we will ensure that you get the right justice. We worked on it closely, and then the case was finally there was a closure to that particular case, and we moved ahead with it. But for her, as a first job, I think that also marks important, that leaves a big impression in their mind, because for them it's a first job in their career. And if it is not dealt properly, they don't get a good experience, they will always carry that impression that probably if somebody is doing wrong to us, we should just listen to it or take it quietly and not raise our voice. So thankfully she raised her voice, we listened to her, and we handled her grievance in a proper manner. So that's
So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sharvari, for sharing that, because I think it really spotlighting such important gaps, right? Because we have a beautiful piece of legislation going strong for 12 years. But if you really look at the grassroots level, where does implementation really stand? It showcases that right now also there's so many of these vendors, contractors who do not have a POSH policy. They do not have internal committee and are not at all complying with it. And we need industries like your organizations like yourself to be able to support them and really push for it, just not wash off our hands, this person is not our employee, so we don't need to look into this complaint. But the idea is that we have to really create a safe workplace and an ethos where we are ensuring that everyone is safe. We have to go beyond our own employees. There is someone who's working in our premises, even if they are not under the employee definition of the POSH law. We need to speak to the right authorities to ensure that they're complying with it. Because then that is really upholding the spirit of the POSH law right now. Right. And then also maybe assisting them with the steps, and also maybe sometimes getting them to the right vendors or who can or wash partners, and sometimes even taking up the monetary expenses also. I'm not sure if the HR did that, but in my experience, I've seen that the organizations have gone that long haul. So we will take care of the expenses, you take our policies, but ensure you have it in place as well, right? There have also been instances where they have had a member of their own internal committee sit through it as well, even though the jurisdiction does not really rest with them. Yeah. And I think the other thing that we're also noticing from your second example, that when you're looking at atypical workplaces, there is also an overlap that happens between corporate spaces and the community living, where again people are not able to file a complaint forward because what if someone gets to know in the community? Or there's a relative. I remember there was one of the cases I was also handling where the respondent had put the pressure on the girl's family by getting a sarpanch to their house. And she was the first generation working woman, where she had to go against all odds to make it to a corporate sector. Right? So there are also we are talking about the very deep-rooted oppression and gender-based violence that we've been seeing in our systems also. And it really requires a support to really talk about all of those things. And the other thing that's really coming out from your example is the fact that when you're looking at stakeholders, is also going beyond the employees up to the families to ensure them that we are here to support you and back you, go forward with this complaint as well. So it requires multiple conversations. Yeah, so thank you for highlighting that. Since we're talking about parental involvement, and Ankita, if I can bring you in, right? Because with you, you're also working with students, minors, you would also need parental consent. And if a concern were to get raised, how would that really look like in terms of involving the parents? Do you also look at sensitizing the parents, letting them know that you're POSH and POXO compliant? What does that really look like, and the kind of concerns and complaints that you have witnessed and encountered?
Um, so I would like to highlight that it's not just parents. We have a wide range of extended family also participating in various activities, like right from the admission process to the examination process. Uh, we have faculty interactions, we have employee interactions, because there's a team that is constantly dealing with the student grievances, student ticketing. So they are somehow involved with parents and extended family. There are brothers, there are sisters who constantly try to get in touch. And while we try to maintain privacy of all employees and students, today the ecosystem is such, the digital ecosystem is such that the contact numbers are so easily available. Controlling that information becomes very tough for us. So managing stakeholders right from under 18 to the faculty to the students is still one part of it, but managing the social media communication, the messaging apps, WhatsApp or Twitter or any other app for that matter, controlling that, even to have information that people are connected through these means, is very tough at our end. And where there are virtual interactions, and suddenly some or the other issue surfaces, which is absolutely unexpected, because no one is close to us, we can't actually physically see anyone, everything is virtual, we have not met anyone in person. So and everyone is open to the public forum, so things get escalated so quickly, and there is no way to retract any of the information that goes on public forums. So here it becomes a tough in managing the public forum information, coordinating with these stakeholders, and with this generation, everything has to be very swift, very appropriate. You cannot risk any communication going out in a wrong form, or you're not being acknowledged. So while we are at a very nascent stage, we have not had many issues. We have been very vigilant considering what a typical university might face, and we are not far behind. We are not far behind just because we are not, say, in a hostel or in a campus, but people are so well connected, and that is where it becomes very challenging at our end.
Yeah. And I think because ethics is such a new space, I think we have to also really wait to see how the harassment is going to really look like. Because what I understand from your space right now, these are all recorded classes. There is no interaction happening either among students or student and teachers as well. So I think that also there are such unique challenges in those spaces where we have had experiences of teachers filing a complaint against a student, of stalking, for example, and online stalking, right? So I'm wondering, how are we also looking at managing these situations? For example, because they might not be direct interactions, but like on social media, they still know who the teacher is. And if they start following them or there's some cyber stalking will take place, how are the systems? And have you come across any of these complaints? And what is your view on that, either from EdTech or from your prior experience?
So that's where I come from. The mobile numbers, the personal email IDs are so easily available on the system right now. We have ensured that we will not be sharing any contact details with any of the students or say extended families. But still, there are groups where people are connected. Very surprisingly, they are absolutely connected, and there are communications happening which are beyond our control, and they get escalated, and only then they reach out to us. And okay, some things have happened, and then we get screenshots, and that is the extent of it that we can get involved. While when we talk about what we have been trying to do to control these things, is we are only interacting on platforms. We have LMS, we have open discussion forums on LMSs where the student faculty interactions are restricted to. We have email IDs, we have say toll free numbers through which any required communication which cannot happen through say just emails or forums, we close these conversations through such numbers where people cannot directly know who they are speaking to or how they can directly reach out. We also have certain ticketing systems that we are empaneling, developing, wherein no direct contact can happen. Chatbot, say, without being personally connected, is developed just to make sure that such incidences don't happen, which are absolutely beyond our control, because there's no CCTV, right? There's a virtual world. There's no CCTV. There's no way that you can control who is speaking how, who is behaving how, who suddenly in front of a camera might just behave very inappropriately, talk very inappropriately. So and they are spread across country. And we also have some which are beyond the country's boundaries. So it is tough to control such situations, and to make sure that we have equal representation from every. We also have student representation on our IC. We have trainings for students to make sure they understand what are the boundaries and what are things that they cannot do even though they are students. And an employee might still think twice before behaving or acting out because it's their job at stake. With students it's not that. They are open, they don't really control themselves in such manner where anything is at stake. Plus the anonymity gives them higher freedom, unwanted freedom to act.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think anonymity, since you mentioned that, right, we also saw that, when there are virtual platforms and there are anonymous spaces where people can choose to be anonymous, it tends to also give a rise in the sexual harassment cases. And that is one of the reasons we also saw a surge of sexual harassment complaints during the COVID times as well, because the virtual platforms provided that anonymity. While I'm hearing from Ankita that there's so many of these barriers that we created to create these protected environments, right, to ensure sexual harassment is not taking place. On the other hand, Anjali, when we look at aviation, there are so many more vulnerable contexts, right? Like, for example, like you mentioned in your introduction itself, there is no escape if you're in the aircraft, or there are layovers where people are also traveling for 2 to 3 days as well, and being in close proximity with employees, right? So could you help us understand what have been some of the unique cases from the aviation industry, and what are the challenges that you have encountered?
Yeah. So I'm not about specific cases, but we are like 4 or 5 type of unique cases, right? And for every type of uniqueness, we have kept creating SOP, how we behave. So one of the passenger related cases, right? So the passenger verbally harass the crew, or sometimes the ambiguity of customer service expectations being so blurred, or minors making complaints against another co-passenger, and the challenge is the harasser is often not an employee, right? He or she is a passenger, guest, and yet we are accountable for safety. So what we created SOP where we focus on isolation of the staff member, we look at secure CCTV, flight report, coordination with the airport, all that. And these are very, very vague and very, very sensitive because it's much of ambiguity. Uh, I cannot talk about specific, but these have been very challenging. And uh, uh, so, but we've created SOP along with the customer service department. Then you talk about confined workspace, cabin proximity, you know, where, the proximity comfort, especially in these long flights, the very long haul flights, right? And the crew to crew conflicts. So, and sometimes, fatigue, it involves fatigue where perception and communication break down. So again, we got a lot of such cases, right? So now we focus on mandatory documentation by the lead crew, captain. We offer, obviously, roster separation, temporary ground duties, etc. So we get a lot of data. Then the other agency interactions which every company has, right? Harassment by a third party or vendor, like staff. And also there's a power imbalance between regulatory agencies, airlines, and you know there's also, okay, so SOP, we have joint protocols, multifunctional stresses, and we have strict MOUs. We define the external agency conduct standards. So now we also the department contracts, and most of our agencies, they have very, very strict MOUs about such cases, about anything ethical. So we created that. Then of course you put stations and layovers, you know, hotel layovers, peer harassment, improper conduct in hotel lobby. Uh, so again, over here we have very, very tight pre-approved master tender, GPS monitored. Every cab is GPS monitored. Very, very strict alcohol and behavior protocols for every cabin crew, every crew who signs, and very, very tight. The hotel as well. We also have the digital and social media, and then the other challenges, Sana, we've seen them so much with Sana. False complaints, triggered by customer service conflicts. So sometimes we have retaliatory complaints from passengers who denied some services, and sometimes physical contact in misrepresented. So again, very, very strong behavior documentation. Everything is very, very highly documented. How a pilot can behave, how a cabin crew can behave, how a ground staff can behave. So many of these challenges are mainly because, especially the passenger or the nature of it. I cannot talk about specifics, but some of the passengers have been very, very challenging. So I hope that's sorted, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think you're also looking at when you're looking at the context of harassment, right? It's fairly varied.
Yeah,
Not only
yeah,
in the
yeah,
craft, say in the
yeah.
cockpit, in the galley, when the lights go off as well. It's also doing
With
at
the
the hotel,
passenger, yeah,
the
with the
passengers.
guests who are traveling, yeah, that's so vague because they are passengers, right?
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
not agents that contact. They're your passengers, and they're not anyone's employees. Dealing with that is very, very. That's really been,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And we're also looking at that, while on one hand, you do have policies for the cabin crew not to be consuming alcohol or any substances, but on the other hand, the long flights will, you're serving alcohol as well, right? So what if the
yeah,
passengers
yeah,
are in
yeah,
intoxicated
yeah,
state? And then to
yeah, yeah,
really manage their behavior as well at that point in time,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And even if you
yeah,
are in a confined space, if something untoward
yeah,
to happen, we have to
yeah,
still be part of the same flight and see that person.
yeah.
And just the
And even
impact. Hmm.
no, so one more thing is that in a flight, in a long flight, you have no access to internet, Wi-Fi to log a complaint. You have to wait for the aircraft to land and then log, if any. And what happens during the hours of the flights, it becomes very, very vague and ambiguous. So that's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I think when I'm hearing all of you talk, right, one thing that's really standing out to me is also the mental health impact. When you're looking at being in the same flight with the person who has transgressed your boundaries and having to serve them, or because your cabin crew is very limited, but 4 people or 4 to 6 people, right, depending on the capacity of the
yeah,
flight, you can still see the respondent, right? So that impact of it. Or when you're looking at Sharvari's
yeah,
case as well, where someone is pressurizing the family, and you're not only fighting a case in the office, but you're also finding a case at home as well for me to really pursue that complaint. And just the impact that it takes. Or if you're looking at from Ankur's context as well, right? When there is something in the community and there's so many of mindsets and attitudes that may not be very supportive, and the impact that might also take on the complainant, whether to file a complaint or not. And again, from education sector, if I raise a complaint, will that really jeopardize my education? Is it serious enough for me to jeopardize someone else's academic future as well? Is it okay for me to not file a complaint? Should I just ignore, brush it on the carpet? And these are some of the aspects that are really coming up. So now I want to actually bring you in the conversation as well, since as a lawyer, there have been so many conversations around lawyers experiencing harassment, and does the bar council really need to have an internal committee, right? What does POSH implementation really look like in the legal fraternity? If you can share your views on that.
Sure. Then I would also request Ankur and Sharvari to keep me honest on this, since they're also from legal background. So when it comes to bar councils, there is a policy. In fact, a very from the Supreme Court Bar Council to different courts have their own regulations that they have in terms of, or which they call as policies, which they and the stakeholders over there are not really advocates. In fact, there was a recent judgment also of the Honorable, I think, Supreme Court, which sort of absolved the advocates from being, called out or considered as employees of the bar council, and hence no posh cases can be filed against them. So we are in a privileged position, rightly, wrongly. Having said that, there are forums available in terms of the court that they practice in, probably that the bar association. So bar councils are, who grants licenses to the advocates, but there are bar associations that are also sort of, where a lot of lawyers who are practicing litigating lawyers is where I can speak from that experience. Of course, when it comes to, like, the folks like Sharvari and Ankur, and I want to bring you all in also in this conversation, because you're from legal background and from the corporate setup. I think that works very differently as opposed to the legal or the litigation setup that we have. I think we both would agree with that.
Uh, yes, I think I do agree on what you said, Sana. I think it's quite different in both the spaces. Yeah. And Ankur, if you would want to add anything here.
I think very well said, Sana, in terms of that. In fact, that is where, in fact, I saw a comment or a question which is coming up where warehouse setup, the parties are involved in contractual work with the vendor. What is a principal employer? Can we enforce that or not? That is a similar kind of setup which is there.
Yeah.
That's
And
correct.
that is where the safe or transparency is required in terms of providing the protection, whether this is a on-roll, off-roll, or a contractual labor. And answering what Mika has said and Sana, what you are asking, that is where we don't, as a corporate, we don't stop ourselves. In fact, the POSH for us is not only prevention of sexual harassment in a working place for women, but everybody. So that is where it is a safe environment which is required. Maybe to answer what Bhumika has asked is maybe have a clauses in the agreement where these kind of things can be preventive, and if no action is taken, just get do away with the vendor or the scenarios. So that is where the equity, according to me, the safety is much more relevant, and it will not be, yes, POSH give us that direction, and that is on corporate, the organizations and the policies which is govern that, to equate everybody in that sphere, whether a woman or a man, the equal protection is given irrespective of scenarios and the scenarios which you mentioned about.
Yeah. And when it comes to the legal fraternity, the understanding is anyways lawyers are aware of their rights. So obviously they'll be protected or they can be adequately protected. But litigation lawyers know the reality, and I can see Sharvari and Ankur smile at that as well. But having said that, I mean, there is a lot of dynamics in terms of hierarchical differences. And when I'm hearing Anjali and Ankita also speak, right, when it comes to the kinds of cases that we've handled, what are the challenges I think that are coming, that are highlighted from whatever the panelists have spoken so far? I think what is standing out to me is the fact that documentation, right? Ankur spoke about it. Anjali spoke about the SOPs. Ankita spoke about, policies and sort of social, POXO regulations and other regulations that you have. But at the end of the day, you can have all the documentation that you want, unless and until you have actual implementation on ground and understanding. Is that what we're looking at, right? Some of the cases that I can recollect is even just basic understanding. Ankita, I want to highlight one very interesting case that we were handling where there was a party at a particular workplace where a kid, a 17-year-old daughter of an employee had come, and they had exchanged number with another co-worker of that employee, and then there was messages being exchanged asking personal questions about her whereabouts, etc. Now, there is an overlap of POSH, POXO, and also workplace. And again, that whole discussion also took turns in terms of understanding, is it really a workplace? That whole conversation that's happening on a social media platform in a personal capacity, the point that you raised, I think those are also overlaps that happen in all the industries and all the things that we've been seeing so far. Because those cannot be controlled beyond a point. And then there's a whole line about what is personal and what is really professional, in terms of the kind of handlings that we do. In terms of, the security and safety, when I think everybody would agree that prevention is better than cure. I just want to take advantage of the panelist, experience today. I'm sure you're leaders and pioneers in the field and in the industry that you belong to. And I would like, all of you to sort of give us some tips, some strategies that you have incorporated in your experience as leaders and people leaders, and which have worked, or probably which did not work, but you thought that they could be sort of path breaking, but did not work or backfired. I mean, we're looking at experiences which worked and didn't work, and so that we can learn from those, even the shared and the positives as well as the negative experiences, so as to speak. Maybe Ankita, we can start with you.
Hi. Yeah. So we haven't had with the digital space yet, wherein something has backfired on us so far, but we are constantly making sure that everyone is well trained, understands their boundaries, and as I mentioned in the previous discussion also, that we have made sure that we have restricted our conversations, especially with the student faculty bit, wherein it is only under regulated forums. It is only through emails, or it's only through an LMS, it is only through a Zoho or a Salesforce, wherein it is absolutely regulated. Everything is tracked and well understood on what the conversations are, even the call recordings where employees directly connecting with a faculty, a student, these are recorded calls. So we make sure that nothing is going beyond the boundary of official professional manner. However, the students wherein they are connected on certain study related or project related, or these happen on personal forums, so that is where it can still cause escalations, and that is where it has been little difficult for us to manage.
And say if I have to ask you, Ankita, your personal you can be as candid as possible. Probably what are the things? Because, I'm sure you're, I'm not sure whether you're familiar actually, but Australia recently banned the use of social media between a certain age group of, kids. They said no social media usage whatsoever. If something like that, say, is implemented in a country like ours, Ankita, Sharvari, Anjali, Ankur, whoever wants to come in here, how does that really look like? And will that really be a preventive measure, according to you? Anyone who wants to chime in?
So I will give you an example, interesting example. So for creating a safe space, what we saw that proactively create scenarios which will lead to the safety. We are in a beer industry, and appropriate or misappropriate behaviors happen when somebody is drunk. And so we have a drink responsibly that you can't handle alcohol much, maybe 2 pints of beer, 3 pints of beer. Beyond that, we need to bring in rationing. Maybe give a coupon to Sana. Sorry, if you don't drink because of your religion, or Samriti coming in, only 2 coupons to her. And the question which was asked, are we responsible? Are we treating them as a kid where they don't have a control over themselves? So that is one thing which we have to also ask as a management team. And then there is a maturity which came in where simple and the induction with the people team and us as a compliance and legal talking about to be have a drinking responsibly. So one is safety. We don't want anybody to be driving. We don't want any misappropriate behaviors. And we are seen as the first thing which will come as a reputation risk is, oh, look at the person who is coming from a largest beer company and misbehaving on the road, or somebody being drunk. So there is a corporate communication issue, there is a reputation issue, and yes, there can be a posh issue. So that is a maturity where we have reached in, where we bring in proactively from a people's point of view, from a corporate communication point of view, from a legal compliance point of view. Simple. When I ask induction, I gave them a hint in more exact. Next time you get a challenge of drinking driving, don't come, send your resignation. So that is creating a behavior where people are responsible, and now we are not treating them as a grid. But yes, there is a policies which is evolving. We can't have a rationing. Neither it is a free flow everything. It is a business setting. We go out, have drinks. It is not a party. It is a business setting. Our dinners are also business setting. You are networking with your management committees, you are representing your organization, you are representing your team, you're networking yourself, and you're building your brand. So it is very much inherited, and we have to build up somebody who is not from alcohol or beer, that this is not a place where you are drinking and having something. This is a place, even if you are having on a dinner, imagine this is a business setup. Yes, alcohol is free flowing, but you are not drinking that much. So that is a genetics which we slowly build up, and it is a prevention for us where a scenario like posh for both the sex doesn't happen, both woman and male doesn't happen. So that is a, I think, maturity we are building up in our, and that will be something which is a newness and innovation, and we have to think through that. Yes.
Yeah, very interesting point, Ankur. Are there like consequences if the person goes above the permissible limits or whatever they can handle limits, especially in these
Look,
business meetings that you mentioned?
obviously, I think maybe person will not misbehave, but your manager is watching, your
So
seniors
it
are
is
watching.
a concern.
So it
Yeah,
is a career limiting move in ABI if you're drunk.
got it.
Simple
Yeah,
as that. It's a career limited move.
yeah. We do get a lot of cases actually also when right after the Christmas parties and the Diwali parties where alcohol is free flowing across industries. Let me add there as well. Yeah, Sharvari, I see you've unmuted. You want to add
Yeah,
in?
so Sana, to your question, if there is a ban on social media till a particular age, I'm sure a lot of parents would be happy. Apart from Posh, I see a lot of smiles on your faces as well on the screen. But yes, jokes apart, I think if there is a ban, I would not support a ban completely, because whenever we stop something completely, people do find out ways, and probably in a more drastic manner, to come across and ensure that they get access to it, which
Yeah.
otherwise they would not even try. So ban may not be a good idea, but yes, a limitation or a limit to what kind of content can they access, and can they access in the premise or not, will definitely add a lot of value. So if it is not allowed in the premises, at your workplaces, or maybe few hours is what you can be on the social media, that may be good, but not completely banning it, if that
Banning
makes
it.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Sharvari, since we're on that point, do you think it will work? Something like that probably would work in an industry like yours, because see, a lot of things might not happen on the ground, but might happen given the the kind of communications that we have across these days may happen over social media. So from a non-traditional workplace that you come from, or that industry that you come from, do you think not a complete ban? Probably I agree with that, but maybe more better monitoring or maybe a policy on those lines would probably help.
Yeah, maybe better monitoring. So we typically don't allow anyone to carry cell phones in the warehouses where they're working, because we don't want distraction is one part, but we don't want any accidents to happen. That is more crucial from a safety perspective, because they are managing big machinery or big goods or big things over there, so that's important. But even in office spaces where there is an access, free flow access to social media, um, policy no, but a general awareness that how much should you be on social media. If somebody is there during breaks, I think that should be fine. But if someone is constantly on social media, then there is definitely a problem. And it also depends on what kind of content are you consuming. So if there is awareness on the type of content that you are consuming, then that is helpful, because sometimes whether it's at workplace or at home, if you're consuming not correct type of content, it is going to play on your mind, and somewhere it will come um, uh, in front of you, or you will come across when you're working, and you may start behaving in that certain particular manner as well. So the type
Yeah.
of content that you're consuming is very important, and awareness about that is critical.
I agree. And Anjali, if I can also bring in you in terms of strategies, right? Since you've been in in those kind of industries, right? And you have to be specific to say the aviation industry, where you mentioned SOPs, you mentioned MOU. So there is very thorough documentation, is what I'm seeing. Has that strategy really worked on the ground? And that's one of my questions. And apart from the documentation, is there any other strategy in terms of an attitude change or approach or mindset change? Do you think that has worked as well from the industry standpoint?
Yeah, if you want to create a safe workplace, as I call it, right? It's not a single action or not a single strategy. It's like a system. It's very long term, and you all know, like in the aviation and Tata's, we've done a lot of mergers and acquisition. First, we took out Air India, Air Asia first. Where you had to create a whole culture of safe workplace, and then we, did a JV with Air India and India Express, and every time we create a new culture, right? So I think it's not a single action, and we focus on creating a long-term strategy, and I've seen it working, right? So I love a few things which you did, and Samriti knows it's really a building a culture of zero tolerance, right? And it starts with leaders talking about it. We made leaders go on workplace and talk about it in videos, showcasing zero tolerance. So what happened, terminations, very zero tolerance. And there used to be a lot and over communication that what conduct is acceptable and what conduct is not acceptable, regardless of who you are, right? So this is like ongoing. It doesn't stop. You see every week, every month, non-stop this communication going across. And of course, I talked about very clear policies, very clear SOPs, very well written, and more importantly, simple. You know, uh, our cabin crew are like 12 pass. You don't have to do a degree also. So, and so we make sure that whatever we write is when a 10 standard kid can understand what you're writing. Simple language, multi-language, and a lot of communication. But so I think that simplicity of the language becomes very important, right? And of course, we had a very strong internal committee and well trained. And as the companies grew, we had local committees as well, right? And which helped. And also, like inside the aircraft, we said, okay, the lead cabin crew is a key person there, or the captain of the pilot captain is a captain of the ship, so he would be. And then we also added hotline numbers, QR code based reporting. We also accepted anonymous complaint, and also we made sure that during night shifts or during a flight, a person can report to the captain of the aircraft. Obviously it doesn't come down, but we made sure that. And the training, right? So we did regular training, and just not once, every month training, scenario based training. These are different scenarios, right? It can be verbal, micro learning of the training, etc. And the other important thing was we made sure from the HR point of view, very strong coordination with vendor and all the partner ecosystems. and we made sure we ensured the POSH compliance in each of their contracts, right? Every contract any department gets into, we enforce POSH contract. We also train the outsourced staff, and we ensure that. So also from a digital infrastructure, you know, uh, there were CCTVs in public area, lighting, and we are even the crew rest area, made safe. The transport safety in late night, it's the whole. But most important thing is that there was a very very high visible leadership commitment, and we also had a consequence management system. Which was very very cleared out. If this is what you do, this is what you get. So, in short, we put some fear of God, right? I want to do that. So there, everybody knew, every employee knew about the consequent management system, right? And with the employee or the managers. So I think it's not one thing; it's a continuous process. And to answer your previous, we didn't fail. We just, I think every small action you do on POSH, it really results. And then we get data on what sort of complaints we get, where we get, how we get. So we did there's a lot we did, especially when you're doing a merger, a PSU or merger with another foreign company. These things became very important. So I think it was half my job, coming up with SOPs and partner related, contracts and POSH contracts. I also want to comment on Australia, right? I want to say that we compare Australia, population with India population, it's hard to ban, right? And with the India Jugaad system, banning doesn't work. But what I really like, the smaller countries like Singapore, which has got harsh punishments, right? So when you spit on the floor, there's a very harsh punishment. And it's worked in India, like drunken driving, about 10 years back, it was more rampant. Then the government said, okay, 1,000 rupee fine, there was still drunken driving. It was 10,000 rupees fine, there was still drunken driving. Only when they started putting people behind bars overnight did the drunken driving go down, right? So the government has shown, their consistency in bringing down drunken driving, right? Today, no one dares drink. I mean, there is, but it's reduced largely from what was 10 years back. So I think from a government standpoint, harsher punishments, is really the key rather than, banning social media, which is very difficult in a population like ours. So I think, and same with the corporate, right? We made our punishments really, our consequences really, really harsh. So, people knew what the consequence of what they were doing. And, we also, what happened, we create stories. So POSH issue came up, we used to create stories with our names and publish it in our report. So people knew that X had done this and this was the consequence. So thought really create a culture across all stakeholders, including external stakeholders, and also put the very harsh consequences and fear of God into people, which, I think continues to work. It improves every day, but I think it continues to work.
Yeah. Before I invite Smriti, thank you so much for sharing that, Anjali. And I think before I invite Smriti in, I just also want to highlight what's standing out to me from if I have to use only, go by my legal understanding of the thing, when you talk about workplace, the workplace definition as per the law is extremely wide. It covers even the unorganized sector. So these atypical workplaces also get covered. What is also standing out to me from the strategies that were just articulated by our panelists is the fact that a lot of them are already part of the law, like having a policy, awareness, training your internal committee, having preventive measures in place, and then sort of leaving it to the workplaces to also mull over, giving the cultural context also some leeways, I felt, from the legal standpoint, right? So I think from that perspective, that law does give a, for lack of a better word, long rope to a lot of organizations also to ensure that the preventive measures are in place. And what you said, Anjali, in terms of retribution, while in terms of retributive measures, that's saying that, hey, if this is a zero tolerance, even if you send an inappropriate message, probably that could lead to a termination of employment, right? That has worked. And sort of I can also see a lot of hesitation in some of the organizations. So it's a very organization specific stand that people tend to take. But again, there is no right and wrong when it comes to those kind of implementations. I think this has been such an enlightening discussion. And Smriti, if I can just invite you in for your comments and also your because you've also been handling these cases from a mental health standpoint, and how does in the long run from a preventive standpoint, and that's how the even so Equilibrium firm is a firm of lawyers and psychologists, right? So that's a very intended combination that we have. So I would like to invite her perspective, Smriti's perspective on the same.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think, Sana, like you said, that whatever we're discussing here is already part of the framework. But I think what's really standing out to me that we need to also understand how do we implement the law to the context, right? And I think the starting point would be the intention. If you really look at the section 19 of the POSH Act, it's about creating a safe workplace. And if we do not look at the uniqueness of the workplace, we cannot create a safe workplace as well. And workplace is not only brick and mortar spaces like we're seeing from today's conversation, it's the people that we are connecting with, the different stakeholders that are involved. And we need to really understand what will be really supportive for them. So I think we have to really look at the spirit of the law to create a safe workplace. It needs to unpacking the workplace and what really means for them. And starting with the intention that we want to build a safe system. And I think Anjali really spoke about that. It's an ever-evolving space that we are in. It's not a one-time, okay, we have made a policy and we're done with it. I think we have to keep on going back to the blackboard and say, okay, what is it where we are at right now? What are we really noticing? So if you really look at the policy, yes, we have a policy, but is it accessible? Like Anjali said, is it simple enough for people to understand? Are we making policies in a language that is understood? If we are looking at diverse stakeholders, say minors, people with disabilities as well, neurodivergent folks, do we have policies that's going to cater to everyone, to their needs as well, so they really understand? If you're looking at dissemination, how are we really disseminating it? Because just looking at a long policy document running into pages can be very, very overwhelming for some people. Can we have more? Because I know like AB and Bev has like a lot of visual representation of their policies, which it's easy to understand. Or we have looking at posters now. Or like Anjali said, that we are having case study based communication that's taking place to really now talk about the importance of POSH policy. When you're looking at training sessions, are we looking at how we're using the digital infrastructure at this point in time to make it more accessible? Whether we're using the LMS, just like how you're doing courses, Ankita's, we're looking at courses. Can we also look at courses for e-modules, which are more accessible, more bite-sized? We have done campaigns at Atypical Advisory where people have got small nuggets of information on their mobile phones itself. Because of blue-collar workers, they do not have devices. They do not have smartphones as well. How do we do these campaigns and drives so that we are able to disseminate information, communicate that helpline number as well? So it's also really creating, thinking creatively while we uphold the intent of creating a safe work system at this point in time. How are IC members creating more visibility for themselves? We're also talking about, do they really understand the unique challenges and concerns at the grassroots level? And that is where representation from communities becomes very important, especially when you have organizations that may even have unions. Or say, for example, daily wage workers. How are we bringing in those voices in the training sessions as well, where everyone feels that we belong here? We are not here only to run money or to run the machines out here, but we belong here because we are adding value. And that's how accountability gets created. One could be banning things. But I know, as you know, what we do at Equilibrium Advisory through our session, we build responsibility and accountability by having conversations around consent and boundaries. It's not that we're going to ban you on social media. Do not have parties. Do not go for events. Do not do these things. But the idea is when you're doing this, what is the impact that happens on you, on people that you closely work with? How are we really creating a safe workplace? And the idea is, again, how each person is a stakeholder in the system. Where we often say the judiciary has made the law, employers are looking at implementation by having a POSH policy, having a committee. IC members are doing their job by conducting an inquiry into a complaint. But managers, employees, person right from your security guard to support people, every single person is a part of the system and responsible for creating that safe workplace. So how are we building in more accountability, more responsibility, having conversations around consent, boundaries, creating a psychologically safe space. Speak up. Even if you do not have evidence, it's okay to speak up as well. And then we're looking at creating these spaces like, when you have the travel. So I think I understand from aviation, when the cabs pick up the cabin crew, there are also these SOS buttons in the cab itself. Or you have the QR code reporting that Anjali was referring to, right? Or you have the policies accessible. We have posters in local languages in warehouses. Looking at how Sharvari was talking from her experience, that partnering with contractors to really support them in building their POSH systems as well that really work, right? And then timely redressal, because if you're not acting timely, people's confidence really drops then in the system, and especially when there is a power hierarchy involved, right? We have done campaigns as well as where people, because they may not know, and these are all confidential cases, people will not know if a complaint is filed, what action will be taken. In large organizations with 20,000, 30,000 employees, the campus, that we have received complaints of this nature and this action was taken to really instill that confidence that no matter what the designation, no matter what your position is, action will be taken as well, along with the statutory compliances. And I think it's also about having conversation in terms of how the space is really evolving. Like if you look at the Delhi High Court judgment that came in July 2025, that talks about how WhatsApp, social media will be covered under workplace. So, we also have now these progressive judgment that looking at the fluidity of these workplaces coming in. Yeah. We
Also,
still, yeah. Go ahead,
I
Sam.
just want to, maybe you have also posed the question, right? In terms of
I
a
was about
question
to do
from
that.
Ankita. Yeah. So in university, Ankita, this is a very interesting question. You can be as candid as you want to be. So in universities and school, is there any pressure from parents put on organizations, maybe to withdraw the complaint or speed up the inquiry process?
So we do not, when it's the adult student, we do not always involve parents. So you know, it's somewhere confidentiality, unless and until it's a very critical issue. Same goes with mental health situations also, unless and until it's a critical issue that is life and death scenario. We don't, in case of adults at least, it is not taken up that far.
Yeah, sorry, Smriti. Thank you, Ankita. Sorry, Smriti, I just had to chime in to the
Yeah,
question.
yeah, no. And there's some more questions that we're seeing as well. There's also a question by Bhumika that can the organization request a vendor to suspend the contractual respondent, although the IC does not have jurisdiction on the POSH complaint? So maybe Sharvari or Ankur, either if you can answer that question.
I responded to Bhumika. I think in this case, Bhumika,
I think
yes, there will be some like contractual obligation which can be created, number one. And otherwise, there is no contractual obligation as contained in the contract. I think there will be a moral authority on where a principal employer, where, let's say in our case, we will be, as a chief compliance officer, I will not tolerate any behavior where my vendor is not providing my protection to a contract level, which I will be getting through him or her as a vendor. So yes, very much open. Yes, jurisdiction wise, maybe I am restricted, but as a ethical and safe place, as an organization, I am not restricted, and I can always terminate that contract.
Okay, okay.
So,
Sharvari, your
just
views?
to, yeah, just to add to this question that Bhumika has asked, what we typically do is, instead of requesting, we suggest them what are the options that are available. So either they can suspend or move this particular person to some other warehouse, some other location, but not anywhere which is linked to DHL, because we have zero tolerance, and we would not want to work with anybody who's involved in such situation. So since we are not the principal employer, as the question is being asked, we can guide them, we can definitely nudge them in that direction, and we can tell them that these are the options which are available, and moving this respondent to another site works best for their interest and for ours as well. So that is what we would suggest.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think we have only about 7 minutes for the discussion to end, but I would like to take one key takeaways from all of you. So you had to have one closing remark from all the panelists, maybe starting with Ankita.
So it was a very well-versed discussion, understanding so many point of views and so many different cases that have been handled. Whereas for me and my unique workplace, I would I would say that restrictions are not very helpful. I think uh, more training, more more communications, more education in the education industry is also very crucial. Bringing different cultures and different age groups to a place where they understand what boundary means, what it means to not offend someone, even if it is fine for you, it is not fine for someone else, and to create that safe place where a victim doesn't have to go through it twice while suffering it, and while complaining, or while raising that to the management or to the respective person. So that is, I think, that is where I would like to bring my workplace to, where the forums are so strong that no one has to think twice to come and reach out to us.
Yeah, thank you. Ankur?
Yeah, for me as a general counsel and Smriti, is more of an inclusion of diverse views, no discrimination on gender, race, or anything, whether for women or men, is the safe place, a culture which is required. POSH for us as a general counsel also and as an organization is parameter where the harassment of any kind, including sexual, is not acceptable. So this is a bigger umbrella where the safety, diverse inclusion, uh, protection to everything, everybody is required. And yes, as a multinational, it is an Indian law which will save, but that is a bigger umbrella. For me, everything is included, including as I spoke about the alcohol policy or being responsible about your drinking. That is the safety. And yes, Posh is very much there, both in the diversity, both for women and for men. So that is that big takeaway everybody should bring in, and as an organization, we bring that.
Thank you. Sharvari?
Yeah. Great discussion, I would say. As an organization, like Anjali mentioned, even DHL has zero tolerance towards such issues or complaints. What we believe is having a lot of awareness, like Samriti was mentioning, that awareness is the key. And what we do here is this year itself, we started the year with creating a lot of awareness around POSH. So there was a question in the chat box which I saw, that having such a large number of warehouses, how do you have POSH committees? So answering that along with this, we have various regions, and in every region, depending on the size of the region, we have different clusters within those regions. So we have POSH committees for every cluster. If the cluster is large enough, then we may have multiple POSH committees for that cluster itself. Now, what we did this year was we started the year with a Did You Know series, wherein we did a lot of EDMs, where we sent emailers and teasers to employees that, do you know what POSH means? We started right from the basic, because we are aware about POSH. A lot of employees don't even know what POSH is all about. So we started right from the ground reality, that what is POSH. Okay, then who is it applicable for? Then what constitutes POSH, or what can be considered as a complaint? Then we every day we would send a email with the region wise and cluster wise committee details. So a mail would go that committee for north, for example, and then we will have details of all the committee members. We have posters in all our warehouses. We have put up the posters in the warehouses. We have it on the TV screen, that what is POSH and who is the POSH committee for that particular location. So awareness is the key. Plus, we include it in the induction. So anybody who joins the organization, it is part of the mandatory induction, that you go through what POSH is all about, who are the committee members, what are the steps, and what can be considered or categorized as a POSH complaint. So that basic awareness, we start right from there. Apart from awareness, it is also important that we give the confidence to our employees or to anybody who is related to this, that there would be no retaliation whatsoever. So that confidence is very important, because people get scared to even raise a complaint. It could be power hierarchy, it could be something of those lines, and they don't even come ahead to raise a complaint. But we give that support and that confidence, that there will be zero retaliation, and you will not face any retaliation whatsoever. So that is what I believe, and yeah, that's from my side.
Thank you. Anjali?
Thanks. It's been a huge learning for me as well. And the only thing is, as I superannuated or retired from workplace, all the law work has been done. I think I just would want companies to continue creating a safe environment where women feel safe and confident to come and give complaints. I still see law not coming forward for fear of social fear, retaliation, or just peer pressure. I just would want the companies to continue focusing on that, so that give the confidence to all the women that that there'll be zero retaliation, there will be no impact on him or her, you know, unless he or she gives a wrong thing. So, but great conversation, and I think it's important to see what different companies are doing and different industries are doing and how challenging it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Sana, from you?
No, I think we've completely run out of time. We've had this very fascinating discussions and this very valid points raised by all the pioneers who have joined as panelists today. So big thank you from Equity Advisory to all of you from taking out your valuable time from your working day and being a part of this very important discussion on this anniversary of the POSH Act. By the way, today is the 11th anniversary of the
12th,
POSH Act.
12th anniversary.
Sorry. That was a bit of a question mark moment. But yes, it was the 12th anniversary of this law. And yeah, that means we have been practicing for 12 years in this law. Smriti, congratulations to us as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. No, thank you all for really making the time today. And I think what we're really taking away is that how, even though it's been 12 years since the POSH Act has passed, with every year, we need to always be on the pulse of the workplace that we're part of right now. It's going to be an ever evolving space. And it's important that we understand the different stakeholders that we're working with and really stay with the intent of building safer systems where each person is an important stakeholder in this conversation. So I hope these conversations continue and we tend to evolve these systems where we are adopting a preventive approach and not a reactive one. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous evening to all the speakers and all the audience members who have been engaging with us on chat. So thank you for being part of this very pertinent conversation. Wishing you all a great year ahead. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.